But this talk was mostly for hoteliers and people in the travel industry to understand the importance of where family philanthropy can play a role in building India, and especially how tourism can be a vehicle for sustainable development. And I know that in Rhea, you're kind of speaking to the choir when you talk about these issues because there's an understanding of sustainability, of social impact, about not just the hotel and destinations. But I think right now there is, I love the fact that the last talk already sort of set the foundation for the importance of this talk, because I think for a lot of people there was a bit of disgruntlement in terms of guests don't care and like it's kind of bleeding money for a hotel sometimes too. Is this better?
Yeah, that is actually.
But I think that so there is consumer interests that are changing, but there are also government interests that are changing. So there actually is right now a cluster approach towards both the industry, hoteliers, travelers, all kind of believing that doing good is good for business. And I think this is the right time for hoteliers and people in the travel industry to understand the opportunities they have. Especially, so I'll introduce myself and tell you where I kind of straddle these two worlds. But my name is Akshita Bhanj. I'm the co-owner of the Bulgaria Palace, which is situated in Bhanj in Orissa. And we've converted our ancestral home into a boutique property. And I've also been in the development sector for over a decade. So being in the development sector, having worked with different NGOs, quasi-government body organizations, international non-profits, I've actually overseen a lot of grants and funding towards different institutions and organizations. And unfortunately, I haven't had the chance to actually funnel some of this funding to hoteliers and people in the travel industry. That's because we're not always positioning hoteliers as philanthropists or people doing social impact. The idea as a hotel is if we're still selling rooms, it's great and there's a brand story around being green, but not necessarily seeing them as entrepreneurs and startup heads. And I think that's kind of a gap that if we bridge, we can increase revenue streams as hoteliers, not just through improving sort of consumers and coming in to take up rooms, but actually inviting international non-profits to tie up and partner with us to increase the development indicators in our destination. At any point, if you don't understand what I'm saying, please just ask me questions. It's a very candid conversation, but the idea is to help the audience understand a little bit of the world of social impact and where tourism and the travel industry can really benefit from it. So the more questions, the better. But I like this quote from Antonio Guterres, and actually a lot of my quotes, if you notice, would be from like the United Nations and other bodies, which a lot of people find a bit sort of not as impactful. But the good thing is that they have set international metrics and measurements that the global world understands. A lot of you all were trying to decipher Mayurbhanj, Orissa, Bulgaria, right? And like I think that something my sister and I realized is we could scream as loudly as we wanted about our destination and who we are and what Orissa does. As soon as we spoke to Time magazine, India noticed where we were. It didn't matter the president of India is from Mayurbhanj. I don't think anyone really knows that. But as soon as Time magazine nominated Mayurbhanj as one of the 100 greatest places in the world to visit, they were like, why Mayurbhanj? But at least they said the word right. So I think that something is that you have to understand the international community has set measurements and standards. If we speak that language, it helps sometimes even the bureaucrats understand who you are and what it means to be from that state. So I like this quote because I think we all know here that how tourism is a multiplier. It's back, I think. I think we already know how tourism is a multiplier of livelihood. So I'm not going to go into like why tourism, let's pat ourselves on the back for being in this industry. But I think what's incredible is tourism is one of the world's wonders, right? In terms of just economic livelihoods, but again, bringing back culture. And I think one of the guests said this in India. He said, so we were driving around and I'm like the amateur tour guide and historian and passionate everything, naturalist and everything that comes with it. And I kept pointing out things that were here and there, and he said, y'all just have too much of a good thing. And that's why India doesn't care. Because you're like, oh, we have 5,000 monuments and 300 are older than the Konark and 4 of them are the most ancient spices in the world. And after a point, like, in Europe, you go to one place and they're like, this is where Van Gogh's little toe touched the wood, and you're like, oh my God, I'll pay $500 for that, right? But in India, it's like there are 1,500 great things, so y'all don't really care. It's like one more old brick, right? So I think that what's something to understand is we do, without realizing it, have the role of both the preserver and, it's the 3 forms of Hinduism, the preserver, destroyer, protector, all of it in one. So this is just a quick agenda, I'm going to say this. But like I said, I'm going back to a lot of people feeling that sustainability, social impact, philanthropy doesn't really matter, right? Like guests don't care about it. The state governments are not helping us. ASI, INTAC, a lot of, I shouldn't name people in this thing recorded. But I think that there's a lot of disgruntlement in the travel industry because we kind of feel like we're in silos working in ourselves. It's great that there are networks at times. But I do want to highlight some data which actually proves otherwise. I think the world is listening. I think industries have realized that international metrics, national metrics, there is a consumer demand. So a recent survey of travelers found that 58% want their trip to benefit the local economy, while short of 81% of global travelers saying that environmentally sustainable travel is important according to Booking.com. I know a lot of people are like slightly annoyed about greenwashing, but you have to realize it's like what Bernie Sanders did for democracy in America. He pushed it right enough that you voted Biden in, right? It's like, so I think greenwashing helps just enough where someone understands what sustainability even is. So it starts off with someone even saying the small thing like close your taps. It's like irrelevant for most of us who are like crusaders and understanding Greta Thunberg's language, but understand it's like the dummies book for 101 sustainability. It still matters in India. A lot of us also have to realize that this is the first generation of India traveling. We're not the most, and when I say that, I mean that with a lot of humility. Indians have just started leisure travel. In our ancient civilization and history, travel was done for trade, for business, for wars, for invasions, for migration. But travel for leisure is just coming into the Indian dialect, and I mean this not like thinking of not just India but Bharat. So a lot of what you're inculcating in your hotels is also for the first time tourist and traveler, and that's really important. So don't get pessimistic so early, because what you're doing is actually changing the way someone's going to talk to their children or how a young child is going to understand looking at the world. And this is where I want to talk about where vacations meet values. India's social sector spending over the last 5 years experienced a robust annual growth. Basically, Indians are spending more on social impact. So when you're talking about the fact that, I'm trying to give a landscape overview of there is a demand and there's a supply, both increasing towards the social sector. So, we are at a space where social sector India's social sector spending has increased. However, of course, being in India, that's not enough. And the social sector really does bridge the gap in especially SDGs, where it's poverty, quality, education, healthcare. Again, this is something I'm sure most of us are aware of, but I think it's important to situate ourselves that there is a growing rise in people spending towards social impact. And I think I put in the millennial traveler, and then I looked around the room and realized I don't think that's how the world identifies itself. But I think all of these are data from reports on Booking.com on the traveler websites, where basically this was a really interesting report, the 2023 How India Travels report says that 42,000 global tourists between 18 and 54 booked leisure trips in 2022. And I think we have to realize what this demographic post the baby boomers really cares about. They do care about sustainability. They understand sustainability more than closing your tap while brushing your teeth. They're also looking at new experiences, new destinations, exactly everything Rare promotes, right? So Rare is the most millennial travel network that I think we can have right now. But also the fact that hotels have to start catering to more socially minded guests. Whether that's sourcing from small local businesses, seeking out local guides, curating authentic off-the-beaten-track activities, and championing community projects. And I think the one thing that I wanted to say again is we're spending more on social impact. Consumers care more about social impact. Hotels, even like the Hyatt and the bigger business chains, have to realize that social impact matters. Because ESG is coming into India, CSR is coming into India. People now, they need to have these metrics whether they like it, whether they have to be greenwashing or not. It's the start of something. Think about the fact that someone like Shivya can actually go to a hotel or PR agency, come back and say, I'm not going to do the story. The biggest industrial hotel chain doesn't need my story. I think it's a very powerful place to be. PR agencies are massive, lobbying is massive. It's a travel blogger who's actually able to tell a hotel, I'm not going to do it. So I think that for us, we're in a great spot to be the kind of boutique hotel we are, where we're going to be catering to a very different demographics of travelers, all interested in the same thing, and we're being able to do something global business hotel chains are not being able to do. It's a powerful place to be. It's like the David Goliath thing. The world is kind of watching what you're doing for a powerful ripple wave. Again, if you have questions, just stop me at any time.
be a slightly slow pace.
Yeah.
Sorry, maybe I am slightly.
No, I talk really fast. But I think that's one thing I wanted to point out is everything is not this rosy, because there is a difference between sustainability and affordability. I think when you get to a point, especially when you work in the social sector, when you're saying, hey, we're going to be green, so you have to pay us 5 lakhs a night for being green, you have to understand that India and Bharat both do exist, and the person's like, I just don't have that. So I do think there's a difference between how you're placing yourself as a hotel to be sustainable, and bridging that gap between sustainability and affordability. For example, I think that that's really in the discretion of the hotel and what you're being able to provide. I don't think tiger safaris can be 5 rupees for everyone. They're not, no one has a hand over, I need to see every animal in the world and it's my right. So I leave that on the hotel, but I think that's something to think about. Where do we become exclusive or elite talking about sustainability? And how do you change your vocabulary and what you can offer in terms of sustainability for the local community and what works for a larger traveler as well. I think that one thing I realized was, especially because it's a rare audience, I wanted to say this, is sporadic to strategic. If you speak to most hoteliers and hotel owners here or people in the travel industry, no one in a rare event is going to tell you, look, I have plastic bottles, I just need them. Okay, but at the same time, like if you do the basics of what a rare hotel has to do, the most basics that Shobha and I drilled into you, this is what I believe in, is we Indians, we still do things a bit sporadic. So, when I got into the social development sector, I felt that family philanthropy, every family in India is pretty philanthropic. Most people's families give to the temple, or once a year on someone's birthday, they'll give, 5 children school books or something. And we believe that's what we can do. But I think that's still sporadic. And I'll tell you why. Because we haven't set a goal for ourselves to achieve in the development sector through your hotel. And by that I mean, there's a very small thing we can do. So when we started Belgaria, we looked at the development indicators, which every Indian has the right. You can find it out online. So that your healthcare, your whether that's education, healthcare, nutrition, the most basic 3 things in India, I think we always see around us. Find out the local development indicators of your district or your state. Then look at national priorities that the government has set for you. And we said, okay, there are 2 things that I think we can target. And for us, that was gender and climate. I stay in Orissa, so we have a cocktail of natural disasters we get every year, from running during forest fires to cyclones to droughts in the middle. So climate was something I realized was an intersectoral lens with which I could talk to people about. There's a website called climbs.com. You can track your hotel's carbon footprint. These are things I had to learn, but at the same time, I felt like I need to find measurements to what I'm talking about when I'm saying I'm trying to be sustainable. And I think the biggest thing is to say that realizing your limitations. I can't say I have a 0 carbon footprint, but I can tell you steps I'm trying to get to achieve to that. And most of us, probably even me, we don't know. So that's what I mean by sporadic. If you're saying I'm hiring 5 people, I'm giving 5 people an education, once or twice a year we do a cultural performance, it's a little sporadic. Are you saying you're increasing and saving a dying craft and that's your goal through all these 3 things? Are you saying you're trying to make sure that the absenteeism rate of the tribal girls in your town from 30% has gone down to 5%? That's your target. Your guest doesn't need you to be Greta Thunberg or Nelson Mandela. The guest just needs to know one thing you care about, and the last 5 years, how you move the needle on 1 or 2 things. And that's really what sticks. People also don't want a media jargon on them. They just want to know like one anecdote of someone's life you've changed or one data. The rest for them kind of becomes a blur. So I don't know I'm not going to read through all of this, but there seems to be a few ways that a responsible travel company, what that is. So it's whether it's a clear environmental strategy. Like I said, research and development is the first way to get to monitoring and evaluation. The second one was a social action plan. So then having that put in place and following it. And then of course a governance structure that embeds sustainability across the core business. A lot of this is jargon, so I'm going to give you examples, but Shivya said this last time, right? Hoteliers, you speak to a hotelier or a CEO, they will give you the PR answer to what their hotel is doing and is becoming the next torchbearer of social sustainability. I'll tell you what most guests do. They talk to the person serving their breakfast. यहाँ पर होटल में क्या होता है? आप क्या करते हो guest sustainability के लिए? Your waiter does not understand sustainability. The guest thinks you do 0. So the guest is going to walk around and ask your Mali, यहाँ पर organic farming क्या होता है? He doesn't know what organic farming is. The guest feels you do nothing. The guest is very much empowered today. They are the Nancy Drew. They are the journalists. They are the influencers. They have taken up all the roles that they can find to be the global humanitarians within their 5 days on your property. And guests are looking at your kitchens and bathrooms, not your front facade and the Instagram spots. So I think that just knowing that has your messaging reached the last mile in their local language where they can explain it to someone, then you've done your job. If not, that's what you learned from a liberal arts degree, it does not apply in your hometown. I know this from personal experience. But I think that again, right, like this thing about like, do guests even notice what I'm doing, and like, I'm wearing a sari in handloom and look how much I'm supporting local arts. Your guest does not know, but sometimes your guest picks up on it. This sustainable travel study, I've put links to this and I can share all of this with you, but according to the study, 69% see sustainable traveling as lessening environmental impacts, supporting local economy, supporting local cultures. I mean, the data speaks for itself. The consumer has moved, they have become more evolved and aware. So this was, I'm going to quickly run through some of this before I go to Red case study. I think that's more exciting. But I think this is what I was saying before, right? Like assessing current practices is the first beginning. It's just looking at the development indicators. Something from Orissa that I always thought is, people always introduce me this way, right? They're like, you'll never guess where this palace is. These two sisters have what they have done for like, I think one headline was, the Belgaria Palace pulls Orissa out of the dark ages, or like, from the belly of poverty comes this palace. Like, none of this is doing anything for people coming to us, These very well-meaning guests or journalists. Or like, I think people should come and be like, oh my god, there's so much greenery because we only read about the famines. And then, like, you have to start from there to like get into. So I think when we were pitching as well, we'd be like, we start from saying like, we are in India, we are in, stable Orissa, but in any case. But the point of this is like, the first thing we had to do was, something I realized was, this idea of Orissa and poverty was so entrenched in guests and travelers' minds that I made it a mission to have 100 positive stories in the last 3 years. So we always sold the destination, never the property. Your property is so intermingled with your destination that if you think of this as an ivory tower, the guest immediately picks up on it. And I think there's a certain kind of guest who wants to come, but the one who wants to keep coming back, tell their friends about it, come back with their families, their grandchildren have their weddings with you, they need to feel like this entire destination, they have some karmic connection with it. They really start feeling for the place, right? And I think a lot for that. So we really deep dived, like I said, about the our development indicators. We looked at something called csr.gov.in that shows how much your CSR spending in your district is and what that CSR goes towards. My district has close to 10,000 crores. I come from that district. I want to know where that money is going towards. But now I know at least who can fund my next projects. Okay, so I think that be very well aware of your district, of the local stakeholders, non-profits, etc. Start building your internal assessment of your hotel's current sustainability as well as within the destination, what you can do about it. Second, research and identify key sustainability issues. Like I said, what's the biggest issue and problem you're trying to solve? Your people love to come on board a movement. Like Anna Hazare, what was his one problem? His thing was corruption. Just everyone's like, yeah, I get it. Everyone hates corruption. Like it has to be that easy to understand why an entire country will go behind your thing. So, for us, I think it was about, and I think a lot of people identified with who we were. We always thought that we were selling Bulgaria on its history, on 1,000 years of it being there, on this Victorian architecture, and people would be like, "Bhai nahi aapke paas." That simple. They just, because we were two sisters, this big thing, but we didn't even know that being two girls was like our biggest thing ever, right? Like lottery of just my genes. But they were like, because we had no brother and there were two girls who had restored a property which had been in the family, that was mind-blowing for them. And we took it in our stride. And so, so it was pretty clear to us that our biggest cause area was, climate and gender. One, because the second thing to tell them, they were like, Odisha mein jo cyclone hota hai, drought hota hai, the forest fire bhi hota hai, and by then you're getting to winter season is when tourists come there, the global epidemic is not what they want to enter, but we were like, okay, gender, and we realized gender and climate were the intersectoral lens through which to talk about initiatives we want to do, and we tied all our experiences to that. So find that one cause and everyone wants to come because then they feel like when they put that $1 into your property, like it's fine. But the point is, everyone really feels that when we get one press release, we show it to everyone, the team staff, we translate it. Or for example, we have installations with Santali saris, etc., and we let the staff know that this is what their grandmothers would wear. But the point is, bring everyone onto your movement. How is talking about women in Bhanj everyone's issue, and everyone wants to jump into it, or sports or climate or whatever it is you want to do. Second, and the most important thing, and most people know this, but engage with local communities and stakeholders. And what I mean by that is, if you have, for example, if you want to talk about conservation or wildlife, there already are community champions doing amazing work. The other thing is, we feel we have to do everything, right? Like, I have to build the next football stadium to get sports in Bunch. I don't. The government funds for that. Someone else can do that. Another foundation can probably do it better. So understand who are your partners, and it's always collaboration over competition. The minute you start thinking that I can't work with someone else because it's way too similar, it doesn't matter because the pie is big enough for everyone. Of course, implementing sustainable practice from idea to execution. And this summer, I'm going to jump into some of these things. The last one I do want to talk about is monitoring and measuring impact. I think that's something that I haven't done yet, but annual reports is really important. If you're going to ask a politician every 5 years what he's done for the constituency, I mean, what has your hotel done for the district? And if you can't answer that, don't expect the next time the politician comes to, like help you out either. So I mean, like, you are your biggest cheerleader. No, like, like, we have to realize that there's only so much that social media, PR, and anything else can do. But take out a 5-year plan. This is what my hotel said we're going to do in 5 years. This is what we did. And I'm saying this for most people because a lot of us are connected to the land we come from, where our hotels are. Then it matters even more because you've become a custodian and the community rallies around you. They'll want to do more experiences for you. Someone's grandmother will want to cook for your guests because you've understood the symbiotic nature between the village person, whether whoever they are, and what your hotel does. And you've made him believe that my hotel will only run if you believe it will run, and your house and your income gets bigger if my hotel runs. Then everyone is part of this, and of course, advocating for positive change through this, right? So then, for example, when your local MLA or MP, I don't know if this happens to all hotels, it's like a personal example I've thrown upon you all. But when they come for campaigning or when there's something happening and you want to make a larger noise about it, you're advocating for one positive change. People get one thing you want to do. So if your hotel wants to become a beacon for sustainable architecture and you go on about that for 5 years, they get it. If you're saying you're just the best thing because I'm really green and I'm sustainable and I get this and I give jobs, it's like you've washed over their heads. You're doing everything really great, but not one thing that makes them believe that I'll stand by you. And this is something we can push a movement towards. Um, Again, this is just more data and facts I'm throwing at you all, but like many consumers actually remember things you put out there for low impact, for environmental. I'll skip over some of these data points. Consumers have already started making shifts about where and how they're buying and what they're doing. So one day in a traveler's life, there's data towards what they think they're doing, right? Like what they're buying, what they don't mind spending more on for a certain amenity, the way you're talking about it, who your local cultures are. If you say, our hotel is run by Adivasis, great. 80 different kinds in India, which one? So I think just like knowing right down to the 1 or 2 points, I think it's really important. Consumers are picking up on this. And every consumer lives in the Instagram age. So they all want to be different. So this is a perfect opportunity, right? So when I suddenly start saying like, you're buying natural products from Adivasis to saying the Bathuri tribe from the self-help groups has made these handmade sabai grass mats for you, which earns them 50 rupees for every something thing. They're like, oh, that's so cool. I am so cool for doing this. And like, I think feed into that narrative. They're also looking at the way, during the entire trip planning process, most people are actually, there was one interesting statistic I didn't put on this is how travelers get influenced to come to a property. Actually, TV shows was number one, whereas celebrity state was really high up as well, what an influencer had posted about. So I feel like also when you're saying, oh, you're just assuming people come to your property will do whatever they want, tell them what they're supposed to see when they're here. Like apart from us telling them like this is our bedroom and this is what the bedroom looks like, be like, I'm not sure if you knew, but this is a 200-year-old banyan tree which has actually been there since so and so. Let them know because it's like when you talk to a journalist, are there journalists in the room right now? Oh, they are, okay, yeah. When you talk to a journalist, they're not your friend, okay? So when you talk to a journalist, you talk in headlines. So you don't tell them that, like, you don't give them a paragraph of conversation. You give them what the next headline is going to be. You tell them 3 key messages. We've already spoken, so. But I'm going to ask you, like, what you're interested in, what your beat you cover is, or 3 things, or something that I understand looking at, like, I'm going to gauge this person. I'm going to be like, I think you're going to be interested in this, or like, did you know this, or like something. I think you should do the same thing for your guest. Don't give them like 500 pages to read, or like read through our website. We have no attention span. It's been lost since like the age of technology and Instagram, you know. So now it's like, what is the one thing you want your guest to leave with? And so I think that's what it comes to. It's clarity in terms of what's your one mission, how are you achieving it, what's already happening, and who can come on board of this. Authenticity, and I think that's also saying that I don't do everything right. I haven't figured out, like, you know, how the solar and the rainwater harvesting and all of us wearing handloom and the tribe is being local and we're fine. No, it's okay. It's all right. But like, what's 1 or 2 things they're doing that's very authentic and to the local culture, and people remember that. And of course, value. Like I said, you know, I mean, this age of sustainability, and you can't, like, only a few of us can afford it. So really break it down to what does luxury mean and how you're being able to provide that. For the longest time, people would ask us, but do you all have a swimming pool? And, you know, my sister would be like, no, because she's the more polite. And, but anyway, so she would say, like, you know, no, we don't, or something. And I'd be like, well, we have about 1,000 waterfalls that are pristine and they're 10 minutes away. And I think what's more luxurious than the fact that you have your own waterfall near you. So I think it's about taking your biggest weaknesses and turning them into strengths. Really quickly, I'm just going to speak about, you know, then you can kind of be like, yeah, and what did you do, Akshita? But I haven't figured it all out yet. But when we started Bulgaria, my sister was much more interested in the tourism part of it. And I got sold because she said, you know, we can make tourism a vehicle for sustainable development. Tourism can just be the means to get there. Because I just didn't see how we could make this place. I'd grown up here into like rooms, and, you know, all of us were like, who's going to come here? But what we tried to do was basically run Bulgaria more like a startup. So the property acts as a platform. And by that, I mean, one was understanding our carbon footprint and how we can lower it, building a sustainable community which employs and skills local tribal people, apart from that, also making sure Bulgaria becomes a bit of an incubator. I loved the fact that Bulgaria used to be a place where my ancestors would call some of the best minds in the world and just leave them in the house there and be like, okay, like, what are the ideas and what can we do here? And what do you think you can do? And, you know, call artists and painters and writers. And I think we used a blueprint set by our ancestors, because Bulgaria actually used to be a home for foreign dignitaries who came to visit Bhanj on the behest of the royal family. And I think we just had to, like 100 years later, just upholster that idea and like package it back to the world, right? So what we did was and also what we realized was it's a very powerful means to get the best of the travelers. You never know who your traveler is. They might be the next big author. They might be a politician. They might be an actor. They might be you know, like someone who's, so you never know the kind of just the greatness they come with being their own personalities. So apart from like understanding like our sustainability and carbon footprint, the second thing was like use Bulgaria as an incubation house. And third is we always pitch our nonprofits and self-help groups, because all our local handloom handicraft experiences work well with, they work under NGOs. So actually all the NGOs we tied up with, we found local community champions. So we're just the intermediaries. We don't have our own orphanage or school or anything else. We just identified local champions and we told them that, okay, you're a sports NGO, great. Can you come and do friendly rugby matches with women in rugby? And we'll show the case of that to our guests. If guests are going to Jaipur to watch polo, they can come to Meherbanj to watch rugby. You know, it's just about the packaging and the branding and storytelling of it. For our self-help groups through the handicrafts and handlooms, we went to them and said the same thing. Our guests are going to come for experiences. All the money that they come to watch this experience or learn from you goes back to you. They were just self-help groups making mats. They had no idea that they could be tour guides and showcase, a handloom and do all of that. So a lot of our guests have actually directly tied up with the self-help groups for purchasing handicrafts, handlooms. Some of our guests have started their own businesses with this being the back-end warehouse for them. So I think that if you don't want to start your own social enterprise, realize how you can cut yourself off from being the middleman and actually get investment into the self-help groups and NGOs. And this is kind of where I realized we set up our own foundation, because we felt that after a few years, NGOs in India right now need to be as transparent as they can. So we set up a different website and our own page. So we do emergency aid distribution. So during COVID, we reached out, and because we had already built credibility within the villages, we were able to get funding for emergency aid distribution, apart from capacity building and training. So a lot of our guests, we realized, were like, oh, you know what, I love this NGO and I love this experience. And we were like, great, I'll give you a free stay if you can like teach them something. It worked.
people were like, yeah, I'm down. And so then we have a program where you can come and you can, if you're an engineer or a doctor or a healthcare provider or whatever your talent or skill is, as long as you can give certified, sort of training, we'll come up with a partnership with you. This really worked also during COVID when people were working from home. And then they also wanted to give back. Um, and then apart from this, we also do engagements or artist residencies, because I learned a lot of this from my ancestors and people who came and stayed in our house. So actually calling artists to come and stay, and this really works well for hoteliers during leaner months, to come in and have a product where we have an artist residency tie-up with other mentors and artists. So we had a grant, two grantees who had approached the New Zealand government and got a grant to come and stay in Bulgaria for a month to compare Maori tribes and Santhali tribes. So, I mean, your hotel can, the tools to which you do social impact can be varied. And I also call this the cluster approach, like figure out. And the other thing is like, I'm going to like run through some of this, but for example, we went out and realized that arts, after agriculture, arts is actually the second biggest employer in India. So people who are your farmers are also your artists. And if there's a way to tackle both, that's great. So we realized that we want to promote dying arts. We had so many dying arts, and we had families who just didn't, who were ready to sell, like buy off, and I have nothing else to do. So what we did was we started promoting dying arts. That was our main campaign message to our guests. We tied up with two local NGOs, Project Chowni and Dokra, and the Sabai Grass. And what we started doing is walking tours. So we told the NGO, look, I can't keep, you can't do charity as well. I don't have lump sums where I can keep giving you month on month to just be an artist. I need you to also upskill yourself as I get more money for you. So what we did was we started doing walking tours. So the guest comes, the Dokra artist takes him around his house, talks about it. Now he set up a little Dokra station where you can make Dokra with him. He also sells his wares, and he gets a commission from the guest, which we facilitate to having the walking tours. But for us, what's great is as hoteliers, we need more experiences. We need them to be varied. So why not be, again, doing good is good for business. But all of this has to be calculated. So we also take charge year on quarter, how much money we've made for them. We ask them how they're spending that money. And then we check, have we changed the health indicators of this person's family? Have we been able to move the needle on larger facets within their village? That's only when it matters. Otherwise, it's again money being funneled and you don't have an idea of how that money was used. This one's interesting for me because during COVID, we didn't have guests coming in. And the artists were like, now we've signed up for these walking tours with you and meet us tour guides and all this stuff. And there's no guests coming and now my art's not selling. And I was like, okay, I thought I had this figured out. But I pitched to an international NGO for a grant. And they said, we're only going to give out grants for art installations. The beauty of a hotelier is that we become everything, right? We become the construction, interior decorator, and the tour guide. And we do your menus, we do everything. So I was like, yeah, I'm an art curator as well. So, So I reached out within the RARE network to a number of families that I knew of. And I said, look, we have a grant where an NGO called Purpose wants us to look at sustainability through the arts. And what we're going to do is, what I pitched to them was call it the Karkhana Chronicles, where I said across palaces and forts in India, they will be reaching out to their ateliers, their karkhanas, or artists who work in and around these palaces to commission an arts piece based on sustainable handicrafts and handlooms. And so Digvijay Kathiwara, the Kathiwara family was part of it. Yeshwant Holkar, Ahilya, we had Jaisalmer part of it as well. And what we did was we built these installations. And so the money was given to artists to build these installations during COVID for two reasons. One, because money reached the artist, one. And second, because we had our homes converted into hotels, guests were still coming in. And we opened it up to the public or to whichever public communities we could at the time to actually showcase these art forms. I didn't put the picture up, I should have, but I worked with a local artist for the Futa Jhala sari, which is a Santhali sari. And my staff who's in the Santhal community was like, my grandmother wears that, I don't even wear that anymore. But Vogue had the Santhal sari on their cover page, and they had it on their social media. And for most of us, it's like, yeah, okay, the magazine covered it. But the number of comments that I read of indigenous youth across India, because we just don't know any Adivasis as much, in our daily lives, not in villages, who were like, I can't believe Vogue covered the Santhali sari. And you don't realize that it's not always the monetary value. Sometimes it's the intangible behavior change consumption, which actually was like, wow. And so that's how in the art space, we used a campaign to then not just raise money, but push money back into the communities. And all of that while having the fact that you're a hotelier. So your property matters. The fact that you have in touch with communities is an asset that not many other people can. And actually, international NGOs, state governments, quasi-government bodies are looking for people just like you to funnel money into. People want to give you money if you can reach out to more people. And hotels are best place to do that because you all attract people from, like what once a government bureaucrat told me was, you all attract people from, and influence people from Mayurbhanj to Monaco. It matters because this is where you all juggle the land between India and Bharat. Again, this was, I spoke about sports, and this is something interesting, conservation, right? Like again, to the rare network, I was like, Simlipal had these worst forest fires, and I just couldn't believe the fact that half of the district I came from was like up in flames. Like guests were like having coffee, and there's like smoke coming out of the back. The forest is 2,750 square kilometers. 2/3 of it was in fire. I don't think most people can understand what 500 football flames up in fire looks like, and no one cared. Like no one was sending. Our fire department was built 100 years ago. That was absolutely not equipped. You know, they have like a lorry or something. It was just really bad. And so what I did was actually reach out to Pug Dundee through Shobha, and I said, I don't know what to do, but like I can't pitch any wildlife tours. It's like, you know, looking at like climate disaster tours at this point. And Pug Dundee said, we're going to come and we'll teach 25 youth from the forest department how to be naturalists, because you all can then start pitching wildlife tourism, get more tribals to actually be part of the forest department or give them jobs. It helps a lot. So, you know, using different vehicles, and because climate was a big part of what we did, using 2-3 things and looking at partnerships to actually bring it back into the community. But the ways of working, which is really important, is hoteliers can ask for grants. If you have a foundation or an ATG or a page, or even as a hotel, you can ask for grants. You can fundraise. I mean, this is happening all over, but you can, because you know hospitality and fundraising, a lot of it is brand design and storytelling, can actually have silent auctions or dinners or raise money with like-minded brands to actually put back into your communities. Social enterprise accelerators. There are so many incubators. Right now, everyone's investing in everything. You could go on Shark Tank and be like, my hotel wants to do this, and they'll be like, yeah, that sounds great. So, I mean, and the last one is artist residencies. Most of us are cultural custodians, whether you like it or not, because you all are in destinations where you all are prized to be in a certain way. So actually access the market money which is available as hoteliers and travel industry thought leaders to put back into the market. I was going to run through some case studies. Am I really over time? Okay, you can just flag me. But you know, Ahilya, what they do with the handloom school, it's so easy for me to pitch Ahilya. Because I don't have to pitch like, you should go there and they have a beautiful and it's a royal family. No, they revived the Chanderi sari. That's it, story done. They work with 500 looms and they've been able to revive the Chanderi story. Ahilya Bai, I don't know how many of us grew up with Ahilya Bai's story, but like a lot of millennials may not even know about it. But that they picked up one issue, they solved for one issue, and when you go to Ahilya, you can look at the handloom school. They have told you exactly on their website how much money they need for one artist to go through the handloom school training, and on their website, they mention that if you pay for, I'm not exactly sure the amount, but if you can donate this much for one person from anywhere in India to go through our handloom entrepreneurship training, they have this much percentage in income increase for the rest of their life. That's from idea to execution to monitoring and evaluation. That's what the guest wants to read. Most of the guests, if they are being able to afford to stay in your property, can afford double that amount to put into your social enterprise. They are your biggest donors. Glenburn, so I study, tea estates in India have a huge role that they can play in changing the way tea estates have been run and the populations living inside them. But something I picked up was with what Husna's been able to do is actually showcase. There's a foundation which helps run the school. It's the most basic thing in terms of like what you can showcase. But on her website, Husna's made it very easy for a guest to come, tour the foundation, tour the school, tour the cultural program, talk about the kids who've graduated class 5, 10. People just want to know that you have been put checks and balances in place to what's happening to the lives of the children of tea workers. Something on navigation. I was like surprised, who's going to come to this room and find themselves? Who's going to be on the lot list? But something on navigation. It's on their website. It's the simplest thing. It's on your website. No one's going to, if someone comes to this show, they've spoken to 100 hotels. Everyone's great. Everyone's doing wonderful work. But put it on your website. Put the data in there. They've actually been able to showcase that a charitable organization that receives 5% of every room booked, they've been to fund, oh my God, this is like music to my ears. I was like, wow, they actually have it out there. Now someone like Shivya can go there and they can show exactly how they stick by their numbers and what change they've made. So I feel like as long as you've been able to showcase from the beginning to the end, and then also being able to provide avenues of partnership, the best thing you can do is find donors who can come back year on year to support this. Once I've been for Assam Bengal navigation, I'll be more likely to support their future projects or social enterprise, or now take this girl or someone they've sponsored for school to college. Wild Marseille, sorry, the picture should have changed. But Wild Marseille, what I liked about them was environmental and biodiversity. They're really able to understand what's happening in Assam and be able to, they work a lot with research and development. They actually pay fellows to come stay with them and put out reports. Sometimes you can put out an annual report which says that this is what our hotel did, this is how many guests we had, this is how many tours we took them on, and what this community did with that money. What you can also say is like, this is the biggest development indicator problem we have. It would be foolish of me to tell a guest, no, Risa, we have no problem, come any time of the year. It's okay to talk about your weaknesses of that destination and saying, this is really bad, female feticide happens, or like, but, or there's another social evil or taboo you're trying to work with. I want to end on a note where you're like, okay, like this sounds great, and I just don't have the bandwidth to do any of this, and it's lovely, but maybe in another life or when I earn more money. But there's actually an organization that can help a lot of hoteliers. This is more specifically for hoteliers, but there's an NGO in Bombay called Dasra. Dasra actually works with both NGOs and helps facilitate funding to philanthropists. And it's called the India Family Philanthropy Network. They started something called Giving Pie. So Giving Pie is India's first invite-only family philanthropy network. They actually have been able to report year on year that family philanthropy can change the needle on giving in India. And so they actually have been funded by Nikhil Kamath, BMGF, and a number of international organizations to work with Indian families to become more philanthropic and consult them. This is something that is completely complementary to joining the network. The idea is that there's a group of consultants who've been funded to work with families to be able to do any of this in terms of strategize, monitoring and evaluation, build a program out with them and help them do it. And the biggest thing we hear, I'm part of the leadership team of Giving Pie, a plug over there, but the biggest thing I hear with families, especially outside of India, who are philanthropists, I want to go to India on a holiday where I can experience what real India is and give back to my community. And it's really rare, it's really low that, so I think EU and YPO and some of these other big networks do these cultural immersion trips, but I feel like RARE has this opportunity to actually be able to catalyze these philanthropist trips, help them plan it, and at the end of the trip actually have showcase foundations or institutions or enterprises or causes that these philanthropists can give back to. The money coming into India is massive. I mean, it's like a few $1 billion, right? And so I feel like right now there's an opportunity, like I said, as a hotelier, to actually be able to build up your foundation and philanthropic efforts, if that is what you're looking to do. But why I say that's important is because doing good is good for business. It symbiotically feeds into whatever you have, whether it's a hotel or whether you're a thought leader interested in a number of other issues within the travel or tourism space. So both within India and outside of India, being a philanthropist yourself, being able to do that on any scale you want to, or if you want to increase that scale and actually have something like Bill and Melinda Gates fund the philanthropic arm of your hotel. It's possible right now. So why not tap into that? Because as long as your community develops in the right way, you're able to protect and preserve heritage monuments or crafts, it feeds back into why people want to come visit you in the first place, because you care about something larger than yourself. What every millennial does from their couch, I tweeted about it. I tweeted about how forest fires are ravaging the district, and I tagged the chief minister and I tagged the minister of oil and petroleum. He retweeted my tweet saying what is happening in Simlipal to the Minister of Environment and the chief minister. The chief minister in 24 hours deployed over 50 different fire engines and bolts. There's now a Wikipedia page on it called Simlipal Forest Fires. But it's about not being apathetic. I think that's the worst thing you can do. And so I went on every media channel. I wrote to every journalist. I wrote on my Twitter saying, my parents were not too happy about this, but I said, if you're a media and if you can take a photograph or you can write a story about this from anywhere in the world, I'll give you lodging and meals on the house to come and report, because you will not believe what's happening in Mayurbhanj. And we had the Guardian come down from Delhi, and we had a number of, so I think I think as long as you can channel a larger global outrage, your local district collector is going to get a call on figuring it out. Yeah, but thank you.